What if the man who helped change the course of the American Revolution was actually a wanted outlaw? It sounds unbelievable, yet that is exactly the story of Ethan Allen, a man who transformed from a fugitive into one of the boldest figures in American history. Born in 1738 in Connecticut, Ethan Allen was neither a famous general nor a professionally trained military officer. Throughout his early life, he tried farming, mining, ironworking, and business ventures, but nearly every endeavor ended in failure. What truly set him apart, however, was not success, but his unbreakable determination, fearless personality, and refusal to surrender in the face of adversity. Allen's life changed forever during the bitter land dispute in the Ste. New Hampshire grants, where thousands of settlers faced losing the land they had already purchased and cultivated. Refusing to accept what he saw as injustice, Allen organized local frontiersmen into a militia known as the Green Mountain Boys. Their mission was simple: defend the rights of ordinary settlers against what they believed to be corrupt government authority. His bold actions quickly made him a target. The government of New York declared Ethan Allen an outlaw and placed a substantial bounty on his head. Yet the more authorities hunted him, the stronger his reputation became. To government officials, he was a dangerous rebel. To the men who followed him, he was a fearless leader who never asked others to face dangers he would not confront himself. Few could have imagined that this wanted fugitive would soon lead one of the most daring surprise attacks in the early days of the American Revolution, an operation that secured the first offensive. Victory for the Patriot cause and set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately change the destiny of a nation. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Age Uncovered so you never miss another incredible story or historic battle that changed the course of history. Thank you for watching. English who are in the Green Mountain Boys, the frontier militia that terrified New York's authorities. What would make hundreds of men willingly risk their lives to follow a wanted outlaw? It wasn't money. It wasn't fame. They followed Ethan Allen because he stood up for ordinary settlers when no one else was willing to challenge those in power. In 1775, as the land dispute in the New Hampshire grants grew increasingly bitter, Ethan Allen gathered local settlers and formed a frontier militia known as the Green Mountain Boys. At first, they were not fighting for American independence. Their only mission was to defend the land that hardworking families had cleared, farmed, and called home against the claims and forced evictions imposed by New York authorities. Unlike a regular army, the Green Mountain Boys wore no uniforms, received no formal military training, and drew no government pay. They were farmers, hunters, woodsmen, and frontiersmen who knew every forest, mountain trail, river crossing, and hidden path throughout the Green Mountains. That intimate knowledge of the land made them swift, unpredictable, and incredibly difficult to defeat. For years, the Green Mountain Boys repeatedly confronted New York officials. They destroyed survey markers, blocked eviction attempts, protected struggling settlers, and forced armed enforcement parties to retreat. Their bold frontier raids quickly earned Ethan Allen a legendary reputation while turning his militia into one of the most feared forces on the colonial frontier. More importantly, those years of defending their homes forged something far more valuable than military discipline. They created unwavering trust and loyalty. Every hardship strengthened their bond with Allen, who never asked his men to face dangers he would not face himself. When the American Revolutionary War erupted in 1775, Ethan Allen did not need months to recruit or train an army. He already commanded a battle-tested militia with years of real-world experience, men who trusted him without hesitation and were prepared to follow him into one of the boldest missions in American history. A mission that would soon change the course of the Revolution forever. Fort Ticonderoga, the forgotten fortress that held the key to the American Revolution. What if the fate of an entire war depended on an aging fortress that almost everyone believed had lost its military value? That was the remarkable story of Fort Ticonderoga, and a neglected stronghold that would soon become one of the most Important strategic objectives during the opening months of the American Revolutionary War. After, the first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord in April 75. Both the British Army and the Patriot forces quickly recognized the importance of Fort Ticonderoga. Situated on the western shore of Aranui, Lake Champlain, the fortress controlled the vital water route connecting Canada to the Hudson Valley and New York. During the 18th century, this corridor served as one of North America's most critical military supply and transportation routes. Whoever controlled Ticonderoga controlled the gateway between British Canada and the American colonies. Although the fortress had fallen into disrepair after the French and Indian War, its aging walls still protected an extraordinary military treasure. Inside were nearly 60 cannons, mortars, howitzers, thousands of rounds of ammunition, and valuable military supplies. To the British, it was little more than a forgotten arsenal guarded by a small garrison. But to the struggling Continental forces, desperately lacking heavy artillery, it represented something priceless. The firepower they would need to challenge the most powerful army in the world. Fort Ticonderoga was far more than an abandoned military outpost. It was the key to shifting the balance of the Revolutionary War. Hidden behind its weathered stone walls lay the weapons that could transform a scattered rebellion into a fighting force, capable of standing against the British Empire. Within days, a small band of determined frontiersmen led by Ethan Allen would risk everything in a daring surprise assault to capture the fortress. Their victory would not only seize a forgotten fort, it would provide the artillery that helped change the course of American history forever. The daring plan: only 83 men against the British Empire. Would you dare attack a British fortress with only 83 men? It wasn't just a dangerous mission, it was a gamble that could have ended in disaster for everyone involved. Yet before dawn on May 10, 1775, Ethan Allen made a decision that would forever change the course of the American Revolution. Working alongside Maud and Benedict Arnold, Allen led the Green Mountain Boys toward Lake Champlain, where they planned a surprise crossing under the cover of darkness. Their objective was simple but incredibly risky: capture Fort Ticonderoga before the British garrison even realized they were under attack. Then everything went wrong. There weren't enough boats to carry the entire force across the lake. Trip after trip, precious time slipped away. By the time the crossing ended, only 83 militiamen at Amman had reached the eastern shore. The rest were stranded on the opposite side, unable to join the assault. Allen now faced the defining decision of his life. If he waited for the remaining men, sunrise would expose the attack and the element of surprise would be lost forever. If he attacked immediately, those 83 volunteers would be marching against a British fortress without knowing how many soldiers waited. Behind its walls, most commanders would have delayed the assault. Ethan Allen chose the opposite. He understood that in war, speed, surprise, and bold leadership can outweigh overwhelming numbers. Drawing his sword, he looked at the men who had trusted him through years of frontier conflict and gave the order to advance. Within minutes, that seemingly impossible decision would launch one of the boldest surprise attacks in American history, an operation that proved courage and decisive action could accomplish what larger armies often could not. The 10-minute victory that changed American history. What if one of the most important victories of the American Revolution lasted only 10 minutes? It sounds almost impossible, yet those 10 remarkable minutes helped reshape the future of an entire nation. Before dawn on May 10, 1775, a thick layer of fog covered Fort Ticonderoga as Ethan Allen and his 83 Green Mountain Boys silently approached the fortress. Their greatest weapon was not superior numbers or heavy firepower, it was complete surprise. Inside the fort, British soldiers were still asleep, unaware that the enemy was already at their gates. Suddenly, a British sentry spotted movement and raised his musket. One shot would have sounded the alarm and ended the mission before it truly began. But fate intervened. The musket misfired. That single mechanical failure changed everything. Without hesitation, Ethan Allen drew his sword and led his men through the gates. They rushed directly to the quarters of Frontiersmen. Captain William Delaplace, the British commander, Awakened from his sleep, Delaplace demanded to know by whose authority Allen ordered his surrender. Allen responded with the words that would echo through American history. "In the name of the great Jehovah and the Continental Congress." Within just 10 minutes, Guy and Fort Ticonderoga belonged to the Patriot cause. Even more astonishing, not a single life was lost during the entire operation. This was far more than the capture of a neglected fortress. It became Taui, the first successful offensive victory of the American Revolution, proving that determination, bold leadership, and surprise could overcome the might of the British Empire. The artillery captured that morning would soon play a decisive role in forcing British forces out of Boston and changing the course of the Revolutionary War forever. Do you think history would have been different if the British sentry's musket had fired? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The prize that changed the war. 59 cannons that helped shape a nation. What if the most valuable prize in a battle wasn't the fortress itself, but what was hidden inside it? That was exactly what happened after the capture of Fort Ticonderoga, when the Patriots discovered a military treasure that would dramatically alter the course of the American Revolution. Although capturing the fort was an extraordinary achievement, Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys quickly realized that the true victory lay beyond its walls. Stored inside the aging fortress were nearly 49 cannons, along with mortars, howitzers, thousands of cannonballs, gunpowder, and enormous quantities of military supplies. At that stage of the Revolution, the Continental Army faced a desperate shortage of heavy artillery. While British forces possessed powerful cannons, experienced artillery crews, and reliable supply lines, the Patriots relied largely on muskets, determination, and an unwavering belief in independence. They had courage, but courage alone could not bring down fortified British positions. The artillery captured at Fort Ticonderoga changed everything. Those cannons instantly became the most valuable military assets in the hands of the Patriot cause. More than just weapons, they offered hope. They gave George Washington the firepower his army desperately needed to challenge the British on equal terms and transformed what had been a lightly armed rebellion into a force capable of confronting one of the world's greatest military powers. History is not always shaped by the largest battles. Sometimes it is defined by what a victory makes possible. The capture of Fort Ticonderoga delivered far more than a strategic fortress. It provided the weapons that helped fuel future victories and laid the foundation for America's fight for independence. In your opinion, what's more important in war, capturing territory or securing the weapons needed to win future battles? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Henry Knox's noble train of artillery, the 300-mile journey that helped save the American Revolution. Capturing the cannons was only half the victory. The real challenge was moving nearly 60 massive artillery pieces more than 300 miles through one of the harshest winters in American history. To most people, it was impossible. To Henry Knox, it became the mission that would define his legacy. After the capture of Fort Ticonderoga, General George Washington understood that the artillery would mean nothing unless it could reach the siege lines outside Boston. He entrusted this enormous responsibility to Henry Knox, a 25-year-old bookseller with remarkable determination but no experience commanding a military logistics operation of this scale. There were no paved roads, no trucks, no railroads, and no modern machinery. Knox and his men built sturdy wooden sleds, relying on oxen, horses, and sheer human endurance to haul nearly 60 heavy cannons, mortars, ammunition, and military supplies across frozen rivers, snow-covered mountains, dense forests, and treacherous wilderness. For almost 10 weeks, the expedition battled brutal winter storms, deep snow, dangerous ice, and impossible terrain. Every mile threatened disaster. A single broken sled or frozen river could have destroyed the entire mission. Yet through extraordinary leadership, careful planning, and relentless perseverance, Knox accomplished what many believed could never be done. Known today as the Noble Train of Artillery, this remarkable achievement is widely regarded as one of the greatest logistical operations in military history. When those cannons finally arrived in Boston, Washington positioned them on Dorchester Heights, overlooking the city and the British fleet. Suddenly, the British found themselves under the threat of overwhelming artillery fire. Rather than risk destruction, they evacuated Boston in March 1776, giving the Patriots their first major strategic victory of the Revolutionary War. What do you think wins wars more often? Brilliant battlefield tactics or extraordinary logistics? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Ethan Allen's legacy, the 10-minute raid that changed American history. What if a battle lasting only 10 minutes could set in motion the events that would ultimately create a nation? That is the extraordinary legacy of Fort Ticonderoga and the remarkable leadership of Ethan Allen. After the cannons captured at Fort Ticonderoga were transported to Boston, General George Washington ordered them placed atop Dorchester Heights, overlooking both the city and the British fleet. At daybreak, British commanders awoke to a terrifying reality. They were now within range of powerful artillery positioned on the surrounding high ground. Remaining in Boston meant risking catastrophic losses. With few viable options, the British evacuated the city in March 1776, handing the Continental Army its first major strategic victory of the Revolutionary War. That victory transformed more than a battlefield. It inspired thousands of patriots and proved that the world's most powerful empire could be challenged and defeated. Yet Ethan Allen's own journey was far from easy. During the failed invasion of Canada, he was captured by British forces and spent more than 2 years as a prisoner of war. After his release, Allen returned home and devoted himself to securing recognition for Vermont, helping pave the way for its eventual admission as the 14th state of the United States. Although he never achieved the fame of George Washington, his daring leadership at Fort Ticonderoga secured his place among America's most influential revolutionary heroes. Reflection and life lessons. History reminds us that great change often begins with small, courageous decisions. Ethan Allen did not command a massive army. He did not possess overwhelming resources. What he did have was vision, determination, and the courage to act when others hesitated. The same principle applies today. Whether you're building a career, launching a business, pursuing education, or chasing a lifelong dream, success rarely belongs only to those with the greatest advantages. More often, it belongs to those who prepare carefully, seize opportunities, and refuse to surrender when faced with uncertainty. The capture of Fort Ticonderoga teaches us that leadership is not measured by titles or rank, but by the willingness to take responsibility, inspire others, and act decisively when history presents an opportunity. Now we'd love to hear from you. In your opinion, what was the single greatest reason behind Ethan Allen's success? His courage, the element of surprise, or his leadership? Leave your answer in the comments below and join the conversation with fellow history enthusiasts. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to Age Uncovered so you never miss our in-depth explorations of ancient civilizations, legendary battles, and the remarkable events that shaped our world. Your support helps us continue bringing history to life. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.